All right, ready to dive into something pretty amazing. Today we're tackling light and optics. The stuff that lets us see, take pictures, all that.
Yeah, it's wild how we use light all the time, but most of us don't really think about how it works.
Exactly. We're going to unpack some pretty cool concepts,
Yeah.
how light travels, how we can mess with it using mirrors, lenses.
And by the end, you won't just get the basics, you'll be able to explain it to someone else, maybe even impress them with some optical tricks.
Deal. So first things first, light travels in straight lines. We see this constantly, right?
Yeah.
Like sunbeams through a window or...
Yeah, think about it. You shine a flashlight across the room. That light doesn't curve around, it goes straight from the flashlight to the wall.
And that's actually more important than it seems.
Oh, absolutely. Light
Yeah.
going in straight lines, that's how shadows work, how we aim things, even how our eyes see.
Okay, so light's zipping around in straight lines. But how do we actually see things? What makes an object visible?
Well, imagine a totally dark room. Can't see a thing, right? That's because to see something, light has to bounce off of it and into our eyes.
Oh, right. So it's not our eyes sending out beams. It's the light bouncing off and coming to us.
Exactly. And that bouncing off, that's called reflection. Say you shine that flashlight at a mirror, the light hits it, bounces off at an angle, that's what you see.
I vaguely remember from school that angle the light hits the mirror at is the same angle it bounces off at.
Exactly. It's called the law of reflection. Pretty consistent, whether it's light or like a bouncing ball even. When we talk about the simplest reflection, it's from a flat mirror, what we call a plane mirror.
Okay, so plane mirror, just flat and smooth.
Yeah.
What happens to the image when we look in one?
Think of looking at yourself. The image seems the same size as you, same distance behind the mirror as you are in front, and it's right side up, which we call erect.
Right. But there's that weird flippant thing. If I raise my left hand, my mirror self raises their right. Why is that?
Great question. It's our perspective, how our brains see the flipped image. Mirror's not reversing left and right, it's reversing front and back.
Whoa, so our brains are tricking us. Like the mirror's a backwards copy. We're talking about flat mirrors. What about those curved ones? Like in fun houses or car side mirrors.
Yeah.
Those don't reflect normally, do they?
Those are spherical mirrors, and there are two types, concave and convex. Let's use something everyone has. A spoon.
A spoon. Okay, now I'm curious.
The inside of the spoon, the bowl part, that acts like a concave mirror. Concave mirrors are thicker in the middle, curving inward, so they collect and focus light.
So are those the ones that can make things look bigger, like a magnifying glass?
You got it. Think of a satellite dish. It's a huge concave mirror focusing radio waves to a point.
That's so cool. So then how are convex mirrors different?
Well, flip that spoon over, the back of it, that's like a convex mirror. Thinner in the middle, bulging outwards. They make light spread out, diverge.
So instead of focusing, they kind of scatter the light.
Exactly, and that's useful. Think about security mirrors in stores or car side mirrors. Wider field of view, you see more, even if the images look smaller.
Ah, that makes sense. Concave focuses, convex spreads. Quick question for our listeners. Imagine you're designing something to collect lots of sunlight, like a solar panel. Which mirror type would be best for that?
We'll get to that in a sec. But for now, think about which mirror is good at gathering and concentrating light.
All right, listeners, think on that. We'll have the answer soon. So we've got light traveling straight, bouncing off mirrors, but there's another way to mess with it, refraction.
Refraction, that's all about bending light, right?
Exactly. Refraction is the bending of light when it goes from one material to another, like air to water or air to glass. It's like if you put a straw in water, it looks broken at the surface.
Exactly, refraction at work. And that bending, it's how we can use lenses to manipulate light and create images.
Okay, so lenses, eyeglasses, cameras, telescopes, they all use them, but how do they actually work?
Lenses work by refracting light, just like we were saying. And just like mirrors, lenses come in two main types, convex and concave.
So convex lenses.
Thicker in the middle, picture a magnifying glass, classic convex lens. Thicker in the center, converges light, meaning it brings the rays together.
Ah, so kind of like how a concave mirror focuses light.
You got it. Convex lenses can create real or virtual images, depends on where the object is. A real image, you can project it onto a screen, like a movie theater.
Okay, I think I'm following. What about concave lenses then?
Concave, they're thinner in the middle, and they diverge the light, spread those rays out.
So concave lenses make things look smaller.
Yes, the images from a concave lens, they're always virtual, upright, and smaller than the object.
Interesting. And are concave lenses used in things like glasses too?
They are. They're often used in eyeglasses for nearsightedness, help focus light correctly on the retina.
Okay, so convex lenses converge. can create real images. Concave lenses diverge, create virtual ones.
Got it. Excellent. Now, back to that challenge earlier. If you're building something to collect a lot of sunlight, like a solar panel, which mirror would you use?
All right, listeners, time to see if you figured it out. What's the answer?
The answer is a concave mirror. Remember, concave mirrors curve inward, and that shape lets them gather light from a wider area and focus it to a point. Perfect for getting as much sunlight as possible.
That's a great example of how even basic optics knowledge can have some really cool real-world uses.
Absolutely. And speaking of cool, we're going to get into something even more mind-blowing. The nature of sunlight itself. Ready for this?
Bring it on.
So sunlight, we see it every day, and it seems white, right? But have you ever thought about what that white light's actually made of?
Now that you mention it, it does kind of weird. We see all these colors, but sunlight itself is just colorless.
Well, what if I told you white sunlight is actually a mix of all the rainbow colors?
Wait, seriously? I mean, I know rainbows exist, but I always thought those were just like water drops acting as tiny prisms, splitting the light.
You're right. Rainbows are the perfect example of white light getting separated into its individual colors. And that process, like you said, it's called dispersion.
So rainbows are nature's way of showing us the hidden colors inside sunlight.
Exactly. And we can do the same thing using a prism. It's a triangular piece of glass or plastic that can separate white light into its spectrum of colors.
Remember those from science class?
Yeah.
Light goes in one side, comes out the other as a rainbow.
That's because the different colors of light, they have slightly different wavelengths, so they bend or refract at different angles when going through the prism.
Okay, so the prism bends each color by a different amount, spreads them out, and that's the rainbow effect.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing that something as simple as shining light through a prism can reveal all that hidden complexity.
Like we're cracking a secret code in the light. So white light goes in, we get red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet coming out. Is there a reason they always come out in that order?
Definitely. The color order in the spectrum, it's based on their wavelengths. Red has the longest, violet the shortest.
So it's arranged from longest to shortest as they spread out from the prism. Makes sense.
Here's another cool thing. We can actually reverse this. Instead of splitting white light into colors, we can combine colors to make white light.
No way, really? How's that even possible?
There's this classic experiment, Newton's disk. It's a disk with segments painted in the rainbow colors. Spin it really fast, those colors blend together and look white.
Wait, so if I spin a rainbow fast enough, it'll turn white. That's crazy.
It has pretty wild. Shows that white light really is a combination of all those colors. And this color mixing idea, it's used in a lot of tech we use every day.
Like what?
Think of your computer screen, your TV. The images you see, they're made of tiny pixels that give off red, green, and blue light. By changing how strong each of those three colors is, they can make tons of other colors, even white.
Wow, that's incredible. Never thought about how those screen colors are just combos of red, green, and blue.
It's a neat application of how we understand color and light. Speaking of neat applications, let's switch gears a bit. Talk about how we use lenses in everyday life. We mentioned eyeglasses, but there are so many other cool examples.
Yeah, let's dig into that. I'm especially curious about cameras and telescopes. Those things seem almost magical, capturing images, seeing stuff super far away.
They are pretty remarkable, but deep down, they still use the same light and optics principles we've been talking about. Let's start with cameras. Sound good?
Definitely. Let's get the behind-the-scenes look at how cameras work. Okay, so cameras, they're like these little boxes that freeze time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do they actually do that using light?
At their simplest, a camera's a light-proof box, lens on one side, light-sensitive surface on the other. We call that the sensor.
So the lens catches the light, focuses it on the sensor, but how does that become an image?
Well, the lens acts like a convex lens, remember? Those converge light. It takes all those light rays coming from the scene, bends them so they meet at one point on the sensor.
So it's like the lens is projecting a tiny upside-down world onto the sensor.
Exactly. And that sensor, it's covered in millions of tiny little light-sensitive things called pixels. Each one records how bright and what color the light hitting it is.
So each pixel's like a tiny piece of the whole picture. Put them all together, you get the full image.
You got it. Then the camera software takes all that pixel data, processes it, and that creates the final image you see.
That's incredible. Like a high-tech mosaic, each pixel a tiny tile making up the art.
It really is. And the cool part is, By changing the lens, the aperture, shutter speed, all these settings, you control how much light gets in and how the final image looks.
So that's how photographers get those blurry backgrounds or freeze-fast action.
Exactly. It's all about manipulating light. And the tools we use to do it. We've talked cameras. What about telescopes? How do those use lenses to see stars and galaxies so far away?
Yeah, those are mind-boggling. How do they work?
Telescopes, kind of similar idea to cameras, but instead of nearby stuff, they're grabbing light from really faint, distant things like stars and galaxies.
Like a camera, but way, way bigger.
Exactly. And depending on the telescope type, it uses lenses or mirrors to collect and focus that faint light onto a sensor or an eyepiece.
So bigger the lens or mirror, more light it catches, fainter stuff it can see.
You got it. And by using different lens or mirror types, they can magnify things, make them look closer, brighter.
Like a superpowered eye, seeing across space.
Pretty much. And the crazy thing is, the light we see from those far-off stars, it's been traveling for millions, even billions of years.
Whoa, so when we look through a telescope, we're seeing back in time.
Exactly. We're seeing those objects as they were way back then when that light first started traveling toward us.
That's just, wow. Makes you realize how huge and old the universe is.
It really does. And it all goes back to understanding light and how it acts in the world around us.
Well, I think we've definitely shed some light on the world of optics today. We went from just seeing to how cameras capture moments to telescopes showing us deep space.
It's been quite the journey. Hopefully everyone listening learned something new and interesting.
Before we finish up, just a final thought for everyone.
What's that?
Think about all the ways light affects us. The colors we see, the tech we use. It's one of the most basic but also most amazing things in the universe.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into light and optics.
Hope you all enjoyed it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep your own curiosity shining bright.